Following Monday's inflammatory speech on the topic of Venezuela by U.S. President, Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez held a news conference earlier on Tuesday where he urged the United Nations to guarantee peace in the region.
We have the hope that the UN Security Council carries out its responsibility as the main guarantor of peace and international security, and that it doesn't lend itself to military ventures. We call on its members to act in accordance with international rights and to defend peace, which is precious for humanity, for our America, and for the Venezuelan people.
The foreign minister also called out the hypocrisy of the U.S. government in ignoring its own people's struggles.
Mr. Trump spoke about democracy while ignoring the large number of U.S. citizens, mainly black and Latino, who are not allowed to vote. Out of 40 million people living in poverty in the U.S., half are children. Trump ignored the over 500,000 homeless people who live in his country. He ignores the systematic racism that exists in his country, from the justice system to the ongoing cases of police brutality against African Americans. He didn't mention the lack of unions for workers or that U.S. women don't have the right to equal pay with men. He spoke about Venezuelan migrants, but he didn't mention his border wall. He didn't mention his government's cruel policy of separating children from their parents at the border or the deaths of some migrant children in detention centers.
The Venezuelan armed forces have also rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's call for the army to turn their backs on President Nicolás Maduro. The Minister of Defense, Vladimir Padrino López, called Trump's speech arrogant and said it promoted terrorism. He said the armed forces recognize only one commander-in-chief, President Maduro. Padrino López said it's outrageous that Trump thinks he can give orders to Venezuelan soldiers.
The Bolivarian armed forces will never accept any orders from a government or foreign power, or any authority that doesn't come from the sovereign decision of the people. We will stand along the borders, as called by our commander-in-chief, to avoid any violation to the integrity of our territory.
On Monday, we spoke with Max Blumenthal, editor of The Gray Zone, who talked about U.S. President Donald Trump's praise of controversial right-wing figures in Venezuela.
Yeah, I mean, for the average Venezuelan to watch this, even people who may not be incredibly supportive of the government, I think that was a remarkable scene. It would be similar to Americans watching Vladimir Putin get up and praise the mother of the Unabomber, or David Koresh, or Osama bin Laden. This is a right-wing terrorist that Donald Trump brought, the mother of a right-wing terrorist who attacked the Ministry of the Interior and Justice by helicopter, that Donald Trump brought on stage. And so it, first of all, suggests to me that those attacks were coordinated with the U.S. intelligence apparatus. And secondly, it shows how far Donald Trump is willing to go to appeal to the most extreme elements within the Venezuelan exile community in Florida in order to win Florida as a swing state in 2020. What will be the most telling is how the U.S. media will manage to ignore this shocking spectacle of Donald Trump honoring a terrorist who attacked government buildings in broad daylight.
We also asked Max about the so-called humanitarian aid which Colombia and the U.S. says will be forced into Venezuela.
Well, Marco Rubio, a figure that Trump referred to as Little Marco in the 2016 campaign, and who's been referred to here, I think, by a government minister as Narco Rubio, is down on the Colombian border in Cucuta, and that pretty much means that the aid is going to go through. There's also a live aid concert planned by billionaire tax cheat and human impersonator Richard Branson. I don't know how they're going to pull that off in a few days, getting all these high-profile acts, but there's a gigantic humanitarian intervention, manipulation, and propaganda show taking place on the border, and it really does suggest that the aid will go through one way or another despite Nicolas Maduro and the Venezuelan military declaring their refusal to accept it, and that is frightening. It's frightening to some people I've spoken to in the government. What they fear is a Syria-style scenario, some kind of attack and some kind of provocation that could lead to an escalation and the war that Rubio and many people in Washington seem to want. The Venezuelan opposition has no clear plan to distribute that aid, and though they've signed up 200,000 volunteers to distribute it, it's unclear how they're going to get it around the country to the people supposedly in need. And finally, the U.S. media has created this lie that there is a shortage of goods in Venezuela and that the aid is actually something other than a humanitarian interventionist propaganda show. That lie is clear when you go around Caracas and go to any supermarket and you see that there are no shortages here, that the issue is speculation, hyperinflation, and the U.S. economic war, which makes this aid actually a drop in the bucket compared to the billions and billions of assets that the U.S. government is preventing the Venezuelan government from receiving.
English songwriter and Pink Floyd co-founder Roger Waters has slammed Richard Branson's so-called aid concert as part of a scheme to push for regime change in Venezuela.
I've just seen a video clip of Branson with his bleeding heart worn openly upon his Virgin Airways t-shirt. The important thing about this is that even if you listen to their shtick, it has nothing to do with humanitarian aid at all. It has to do with Richard Branson, and I'm not surprised by this, having bought the US saying, we have decided to take over Venezuela for whatever our reasons may be. But it has nothing to do with the needs of the Venezuelan people. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with freedom. And it has nothing to do with aid.
Moving on, calm is slowly returning to the streets of Haiti following a week and a half of protests that left a number of people dead. Here's the latest.
These schools' doors remain closed. There have been nearly 2 weeks of demonstrations. Thousands of Haitians taking to the streets to demand the ousting of President Jovenel Moïse. And while today saw no protests, the schools are still closed.
Kids are still at home. This is troublesome. I have 4 kids sitting at home doing nothing. I want them in school.
While the government has called for a return to normality, parents still feel the streets are not safe.
When you go out on the streets, you're taking a risk. You could be attacked or end up in the hospital. I'm saying this now because you asked me, but I don't know if speaking out is worth it anymore. In Haiti, nobody cares about what we have to say.
It's been the people who have been taking to the streets. 80% of the population lives in extreme poverty. There's a lot of distrust in the government, which continues to ask for calm.
This is an extremely tough situation. The government has shown no discipline when it comes to public spending.
While some banks and markets have started to operate again, the road to peace is still long.
Citizens must be the ones to help things return to normal, and it will be a slow process. The government lacks credibility, so anything they say has little meaning.
There is a lack of credibility because the government has failed to provide access to education to 50% of Haitian children. While the country is slowly recovering from the violence that took place these past few days, the causes that led to those protests remain unchanged.
Pablo Pérez García, Telesur, Haiti.
Our correspondent in Port-au-Prince, Pablo Pérez, brings us more on the developing situation in the country.
Here in Port-au-Prince, normality seems to have returned to the streets, despite the fact schools remain closed. The big news today is the arrest of a number of individuals wearing tactical gear and carrying high-powered weapons. They initially claimed to work for the government, but President Moïse has denied these claims. These news have caused some commotion as the opposition believes this is an attempt to make the protesters appear to be armed and violent. This regarding the fact protesters are everyday citizens who are demanding the resignation of President Moïse due to numerous accusations of corruption.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Guyana, an aircraft transporting the body of a dead man from another part of the country has crashed. The pilot and a policeman survived the crash and remained hospitalized. The Civil Aviation Authority says the plane reportedly ran out of fuel mid-flight. Jamaica youths will get survival skills training thanks to a government initiative called the HOPE program. People between the age of 18 and 24 will receive training in social, economic, and technical skills in order to contribute positively to society. According to Prime Minister Andrew Holmes, the program targets those currently unemployed. He said the program will help develop Jamaica and empower its youth. A massive fire at a landfill in Barbados is raising health worries among hundreds of residents. The fire has engulfed a section of the state-owned dump where old tires are discarded. Dangerous smoke has spread throughout the parish of St. Thomas. Efforts are continuing to extinguish the blaze, which is one of the largest in the country in recent years. An International Monetary Fund mission is in Argentina reviewing the country's economic performance following the implementation of austerity measures. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, has more.
IMF representatives continue assessing the country's economic performance following austerity measures they demanded before providing a $57 billion loan to the government. In March, if all goals are met, another disbursement will be made by the IMF of $11 billion. This, despite runaway inflation, which has already reached 6% since the start of 2019, but is expected to surpass 30% before the end of the year. The IMF representatives has also been meeting with some opposition leaders, due to the fact that opinion polls show Mauricio Macri is widely rejected by the people and could be voted out of office in October. Let's not forget that the IMF demands that the country stay in their current economic roadmap due to the loan made by President Macri.
Thank you, Edgardo, for that report. Colombian organizations are filing complaints at the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights about the massive amount of forced disappearances in the country. According to the Red Cross, there were more than 83,000 cases of forced disappearances registered between 1958 and 2017. And social organizations say there are almost 26,000 unidentified bodies in over 400 cemeteries across Colombia. And organizations also reported that the desert region of La Guajira is suffering from a humanitarian crisis. Over the last 8 years, over 4,700 indigenous Wayuu children have died of malnutrition. The region is heavily affected by climate change and droughts caused by hydroelectric dams. Wildfires in Chile have devastated tens of thousands of hectares of land in the country. Our correspondent in Chile, Paola Dragnik, has the latest.
Over 4,000 wildfires have razed parts of southern and central Chile, with more than 50,000 hectares of land destroyed. President Sebastián Piñera made the announcement at a news conference. Piñera has come under fire for his planned trip to the Venezuelan-Colombian border on Friday to help deliver so-called humanitarian aid. Piñera is doing so at the invitation of Venezuelan opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó. Critics on social media have accused President Piñera of meddling in Venezuela's affairs while neglecting the fires raging in his own country. Meanwhile, in Chile, thousands of firefighters are still trying to bring the wildfires under control. However, these fire officers are also facing an uphill battle over what they describe as poor working conditions affecting their health and safety.
Thank you, Paola, for that report. Heavy rainfall in Bolivia has hampered the government's efforts to destroy tens of thousands of hectares of illegal coca crops.
The government embarked on an ambitious coca eradication program, but the bad weather has blocked it.
For example, in Yungas de La Paz, last year we eradicated between 15 to 20 hectares a day. Today we are only eradicating between 2 and 4 hectares. The rain has made it difficult. It's the same scenario in Cochabamba.
The government took the decision to remove coca crops with the consent of farmers who produce coca. The agreements were incentivized by development programs for the farming families.
All of these communities that will be affected with the eradication of illegal coca will be supported by the government with initiatives, such as agricultural production. This way, they have a legitimate income to maintain their families.
The agreement with the campesino unions reduced violence and conflict with coca producers.
In other countries, there's no participation from social movements. Rather, there's discrimination. The government applies its programs, and it's not going well. While in Bolivia, since President Evo Morales came, the fight against drug trafficking has been nationalized.
In the continent, Colombia is the largest producer of coca, with 208,000 hectares, followed by Peru and Bolivia. However, Bolivia allows the production of 22,000 hectares for traditional, medicinal, chewing, and indigenous rituals.
The cabinet chief of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been fired, suspected of improper campaign financing. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Meir, has more.
On the night of February 18th, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro fired one of his closest confidants. Gustavo Bebiano was the minister of the General Secretariat of the Brazilian government, but he was also Bolsonaro's campaign manager last year and a close friend. Bebiano was forced down due to his involvement in a growing scandal that has uncovered the PSL party nominating fake candidates in last year's regional elections and using their candidacies to launder money. Whereas this is being cited as the most important reason for Bebiano's ouster, Monica Bergamo also reported in the Folha de São Paulo newspaper that while Bolsonaro was in the hospital, Bebiano had secret meetings with Generals Santa Cruz and Heleno and one of the directors of the powerful and antagonistic global television company. As the scandal continues to grow, it looks as if Jair Bolsonaro's tourism minister may be the next one to fall.
That was Brian Meir from Sao Paulo, and Tanzania has sentenced a Chinese businesswoman nicknamed the Ivory Queen to 15 years in jail. Yang Fenglang was arrested in 2015 following more than a year investigation. She was convicted on charges relating to the smuggling of around 800 pieces of ivory between 2000 and 2014. 2 Tanzanian men were also found guilty in connection to the case.
The time has come for us to take our own decision as a nation. Even if we are to be blamed by others, we don't care, as long as the decision we take is for the sake of helping our country and the world in general. The sentence which has been given is in accordance with the law of the country, and I would like to warn all those who are involved in ivory smuggling, we shall take action regardless of their status. We will not allow anyone to continue benefiting from this illegal business.
Zambian firm Amilac Investments has unveiled the first electric car in the country. The firm hopes to turn around the Zambia's transport sector. The first phase of the project involves importing the cars directly from China, but plans are underway to establish a manufacturing factory locally. The company says it plans to make Zambia a hub in the supply of electric cars in the southern African region. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders says he is running for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination in 2020. Sanders mounted a fierce challenge to frontrunner Hillary Clinton back in 2016. The 77-year-old released a video on Tuesday pledging to build a large grassroots movement to confront the special interests.
Our campaign is not only about defeating Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern American history. It is not only about winning the Democratic nomination and the general election. Our campaign is about transforming our country and creating a government based on the principles of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice. Our campaign is about taking on the powerful special interests that dominate our economic and political life.
A coalition of 16 U.S. states has sued President Donald Trump over his plan to use emergency powers to unlock funding for the construction of a border wall with Mexico. The lawsuit argues that Trump does not have the power to divert funds for building the wall because Congress controls spending. French police have released camera footage showing yellow vest protesters pelting their car with stones and objects. The recording, taken from inside the car, shows men with their faces covered attacking the car as it makes its way down the motorway. One man jumps onto the front of the vehicle. The prosecutor's office has now opened an investigation into the incident. Yellow vest protesters are nearly in their 4th month now. And the UK has warned of 3,500 job losses after its shutdown. Its president said the Swindon plant and affiliates supplying Honda are among those affected, adding that the decision isn't related to Brexit, but global factors such as the rise of electric cars.
We made this announcement today on the timing when we decided on the next production center for our Civic model. I'd like you to understand this is not related to Brexit.
Hundreds have taken to streets of Indian-administered Kashmir against the visit of the Saudi crown prince. Prince Mohammed bin Salman is arriving from Pakistan, which is accused of harboring Islamist terrorists that masterminded a suicide bombing which killed 44. Pakistan denies the allegations. Mohammed bin Salman is expected to hold talks on trade. Authorities in Egypt are investigating a blast in Cairo that left at least 2 police officers dead and injured 3 more. The blast occurred as police officers were pursuing a man they believed was responsible for planting a bomb in front of a Cairo mosque last Friday. He reportedly detonated an explosive device he had on him when police officers closed in on him. And thousands of people in Sri Lanka have gathered to celebrate the annual Buddhist Navam procession. Traditional drummers, dancers, and monks gathered in Sri Lanka's capital to participate in the parade. Dozens of elephants also played a part in the festival. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
The life is full of moments